almost 11:25. I think we can go ahead and get started. So my name is Andrew Piazza, and I'm an assistant professor in the Health Sciences Department here at Worcester State. One of the reasons that I was happy to be on the advising subcommittee this summer, and I'll explain a little bit more about the process, is that because the Health Sciences Department, we have upwards of 60 advisees per faculty member in our department that we have to see at least twice every academic year. You know, each student has their unique challenges that we have to work through. So our advising load is particularly heavy. We have a small department, so I was happy to represent at least a portion of the faculty with my involvement on the advising subcommittee this summer. So as you know, the university last academic year completed the positioning study, out of which came several recommendations, particularly recommendations that the university make bold changes quickly in the areas of the student campus experience, LASK, majors and minors, the first year experience, and advising. So I assume that every one of you has at least been to one of those other presentations. Now you're at the advising presentation. So this is a list of the committee members. So my name is Andrew Piazza, and we have Maureen, we have Kevin, and we have Colleen in the room as well. So what I plan for the format to be today is that we'll go pretty quickly through the recommendations, and then I'll open it up to questions and comments. And some people like to lump questions and comments into the same bin and just say questions and comments. But if you have questions in terms of like our thought process on on how this recommendation came to be, we'll be happy to answer that question if you're just looking for a little bit more information there. But if you have comments, we would also love to hear those. But at the end of the day, these recommendations, this report that we've generated, has already been put in a box with a bow tie and delivered to the president. So any comments that you make to us, we'll be happy to hear them and we can discuss them with you. But if you want them to actually be heard by the people who now are in possession of these recommendations, you need to write them down on this form that you have in front of you. Does anybody not have the breakout sessions feedback form in front of them? So any comments that you want to reach the decision makers need to be written on here. Also at the top, there's a link to an electronic version of this. If you would rather fill it out electronically, that's another option. They just ask that you submit your feedback by Friday, September 13th. So that's the deadline for that. So the charge that we had, so there was a positioning study, several recommendations that we moved boldly and quickly, making changes at Worcester State University, so that happened. And then we were charged as the advising subcommittee to come up with a set of recommendations on what those bold changes should be in relation to advising. So for each recommendation, we were asked to give the recommendation and then explain the benefits, the challenges and limitations, any resources that we already have that we could reallocate to this purpose, any new resources that we would need, any items that we discussed maybe as a committee but ultimately did not recommend, any examples of successful models of best practices elsewhere, potential objections or unintended effects, and a timeline for the process of implementing the recommendation. Any questions on the process? So again, we'll go through these pretty quickly. Then when we get to the end, if you want me to jump back, we can do that. We can have discussion. We can answer questions on our thought process and so on. So recommendation number 1 was to create a mission statement, definition, goals, and list of general activities for advising at Worcester State that promotes a culture that advising happens year-round, and pre-reg advising is only one part of that year-round process. So this was born out of the fact that at the academic affairs retreat that happened at the end of last academic year, where several faculty members were offering their input, or general comments in terms of the current advising system at Worcester State, faculty members expressed that there's a lot of confusion around who does what in terms of advising. I know academic success is out there, but what do they actually do? Do they actually sit down and work with students and make their schedules? And so there was a lot of confusion there. There was also some confusion on, well, what am I supposed to be doing as an advisor? Do I just sit down with a student and look at the course that they need and tell them, or is there more that I should be doing? So based on that, we recommended that we come up with a concrete mission statement definition, and further actually coming up with some outcomes of advising. So the same way that when you're designing a course and you put on your syllabus, by the end of the course the student should be able to, and then you have several outcomes that you hope will happen as a result of the student walking in the door, sitting in a chair for a whole semester and then leaving, right? So we thought if we come up with some outcomes of advising that were measurable, then we'd have a little bit more concrete idea on what advising is at Worcester State University. And we could hopefully, as a body, move in that direction in a more coordinated fashion. So that was the idea behind recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 2 is to create a faculty and staff handbook for advising. So as I mentioned, in the health sciences department, we see our advising load is very high. So one thing that was actually started before I came on as a faculty member that was really helpful for a brand new faculty member at Worcester State was the health sciences department has kind of this living document that anytime we send the registrar an email about this complicated question of a student who has these transfer credits and all of this, that when we get an answer to that, and we think that question might pop up again, we kind of put it into a document that we can search now, kind of like a frequently asked questions, instead of having to email the registrar again and again and again. We have that documentation. And on this date, here's what the registrar said pertaining to this situation. So having that information, maybe available on a larger scale, campus-wide, might be helpful. We thought just having a handbook, again, kind of tying in with recommendation number 1. Once we have a definition of what advising is, now we kind of have a handbook of here's how to go through the process. So that was our idea with recommendation number 2. Recommendation number 3. So again, not to talk about the health sciences department, but I'm from the health sciences department, so I'll say it, is to create 2 websites, or web pages in this case. This was born out of something that we're currently piloting in the health sciences department right now, where we have an advising website that's built just for students. And since spring of 2018, we've been trying to condition the students that anytime you need something related to advising, go to this advising website. It's always here, it's living, it's separate from the Worcester State website, so you're not getting bogged down with any irrelevant information. Specific to advising. So now, instead of our department secretary having to send out an email that's this long 4 different times throughout the semester, she can send out an email with maybe 1 or 2 sentences. It says, remember, just like you did last semester and the semester before, here's the link to that advising website. We've updated it for this current semester. Right? So we go in behind the scenes and we update everything. And then when it's ready, we just send out an email. It's really short. Students don't have to read through this long list of things. They get the email, and then when they're ready, they click on the link, and now they have step-by-step what they need to do, and they can come back to that any time without having to search for their email. We can upload different forms and things that you can't do with an email. So that's something we've been piloting. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but the feedback that we've gotten from the students so far suggests that it's reduces the burden on them, and then it's also reduced the burden on us. So I can tell you that on our end. So I know Linda and Hank have been working on kind of an advising webpage for faculty. So I think their aim with that is to produce the same effect, to reduce the administrative burden. So our recommendation was kind of maybe, at least in the initial stages, take what the health sciences department is doing and then kind of open that up, see if we can bring that campus-wide. And if that changes, if it morphs into something that's 1,000 times better than what I've developed in the health sciences department, I won't be offended. I think that'll be great. So the idea is that we kind of open that up to the rest of the campus community, get everybody else involved, again, to just kind of have a concrete idea of here's what advising is, here's how the process works, to have a more rigid structure to that. Recommendation 4 is to develop an electronic advising transcript that will allow the efficient scheduling of advising appointments, while also allowing advisors to produce a historical record of what was discussed in each advising session and to keep track of a student's 4-year plan to keep them on track to graduate. So again, to bring up the health sciences department, so this is something that I've also piloted in addition to the website, is I was able to locate a web-based scheduling platform that pretty much it wasn't built for academic advising. It was built for more scheduling, like massage therapy appointments, or if you own your own clinic and you want to do efficient scheduling. But it gives us all the tools that we need, or we find the tools that this platform offers valuable in the health sciences department. One of those tools is efficient scheduling. So in that advising webpage that I referenced earlier, we just have a link to this scheduling platform. Students click on it. When they make their appointment, they don't even have to email me. We don't have to go back and forth. They make their appointment. I get a text message. They get a text message. They get a reminder text message 4 hours before their appointment so that they're more likely to come in. And so we have found that that does increase their attendance rate, because sometimes they do. They just forget. So we have been piloting that program, and then it also allows us to keep a note for each visit. So I had one student last semester where this actually came in really handy, is that he was from Hawaii, so his parents lived in Hawaii. He told his parents he was going to graduate at the end of the spring semester, but he was 3 credits short. So then his parents had already booked the plane ticket from Hawaii to here, and then he hears from the school that he's not going to graduate. So they call me, his parents call me, and said, "Why did you tell my son he was going to graduate?" And I said, maybe, I mean, you start to doubt yourself, right? Like, well, maybe I said that, but it would have been a mistake. So then I go to my records, and I find that what we talked about was, what we agreed on, he was going to take 5 classes, and he only took 4, right? Because we know that a lot of times students don't end up doing what you talked about in the advising session. So keeping detailed notes is important, and it helped me in that situation because I was able to pull that up. I also had the paper record of the, what we both signed and how it had 5 classes on it, and then I looked up and what he actually registered for was 4 classes. So that left him 3 credits behind, but luckily he was able to take a course over the summer and he was still able to participate in the ceremony. But, in that situation, the notes and the documentation were really helpful. So the platform that I use is relatively inexpensive in the health sciences department, the one that we use. And one challenge to that, though, is that the notes, the documentation system is only as good as the notes that it contains. So if you have the ability to take notes, but no notes are taken, then it kind of defeats the purpose, right? So I even have to tell myself, when I think it's repetitive and like, this is dumb, why am I putting that we talked about taking? But it may help you in the future, when you go to rely on those notes. So recommendation 5, this one's kind of long, I'll let you read it and then I'll talk about it. can look up here. You can also look at the TVs. Get in the group table. This one is saying that all first-year students get advising from Academic Success during their transition to Worcester State University. Some of the rationale behind this was born out of the fact that, especially when you have a department with 60 advisees per faculty member, I would love for the students to come in and, I get the question, well, what is Web Advisor? Never heard of that. How do you find a last course? What's an ICW? Right? And they have all these questions. I'd love to sit down with that student. It's not because I'm lazy or I don't want to help that student, but when I only have 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and I have to move to the next student, right, because we have 60 students, I don't have time to sit down and train the person, the student, how to use Web Advisor and find the last course in ICW. So we were thinking like those nuts and bolts, kind of the process of registering and things like that. What if there were an opportunity when people were signing up for pretty much the same courses, like the gen ed, the English classes, the different last courses? They're already kind of doing the same thing in their early stages anyways, so why not kind of shift that into a more centralized location where we can talk about that, and then we actually get practice for the student on how to use Web Advisor right after, the idea with that was for first-year students, when it's more prescriptive kind of advising, where it's, well, you need to take English because everybody needs to take English, is to kind of shift some of that to Academic Success. While the students will still have access to their departmental advisors, right, if they have any questions or concerns. And then the idea is that once the student moves to the upper levels of their education, when they're moving to their major, then they receive their advising from their major department faculty members there. So that was the idea behind this one. Recommendation 6, develop opportunities for informal advising interactions between faculty and students. So we were thinking like welcome to the department, welcome back sessions, kind of like we do for faculty members sometimes to get faculty interacting. Generally those are positive experiences. So we thought if we could offer those to the students, having like pizza parties or lunch with faculty members, that would kind of reinforce the importance of developing a relationship with your professors, with your advisors during your time here at Worcester State. That's something that could also, that I didn't mention from previous recommendation, could also be reinforced in those Academic Success advising sessions for the first year students, is it could be reinforced there. This is why advising is important. This is why it's important, especially when you get into your major advising, to develop a relationship with your advisor and different faculty members in your department. So offering those opportunities for students to engage with faculty outside of the classroom, we thought are important. So when we think about the idea of the major or the major minor, and wherever we head with that, when a student chooses a double major, then we have the question of, well, does the student have to meet with both advisors to register for classes? Or obviously they need to meet with both at least once, right? Hopefully more than once. But does the student need to meet with that advisor every single time to register for classes? So the idea behind, or what we were thinking with that, is to have a primary advisor and a secondary advisor, where the student has an identified advisor in each department, has access to both advisors, but one is primary and one is secondary, because especially in the later phases, when the student's getting close to graduation and they have their plan and they're only taking a few more classes, does the student really need to meet with both advisors? Probably not. So that was the idea behind this one, is to come up again with some kind of system or process to make things run more efficient. And recommendation 8, our final recommendation, is once a student chooses a major or a major minor, to develop a 4-year plan. It's kind of a map for graduation, because some classes are only offered in the spring semester. So if you want to graduate on time, you need to take this one that's only offered in the fall, and this one that's only offered in the spring. You have to take it now, because if you don't, you're going to have to find another way to fit them in, and you may not graduate in 4 years. So this would be an area where meeting with both primary and secondary advisor is crucial in the beginning phases when you're thinking of that map to come up with a timeline to graduation. And so as we move to, as you may have heard, WebAdvisor is very soon no longer going to be supported. So as a university, we're looking for a replacement for WebAdvisor. So I've been told from the administration that we don't have one pinned down yet, but we're still looking at options. So a lot of these recommendations in terms of advising might actually be addressed by whatever platform we go to. So I would encourage you, if Lois sends out an email and says we're considering this platform for registering students or degree audit or whatever, that you read the email and you reply and give your comments, because it's likely that once we go with whatever solution we go with, we're going to be stuck with it pretty much forever. So I encourage you to, what's that?
Or the length of the contract.
Yes, at least the length of the contract. So I encourage you to comment on that, give your feedback, but also give your feedback on the sheets that you have in front of you, or if you want to do it electronically, to do it that way. But coming up with that 4-year plan, and it's especially going to be crucial for the student to meet with both advisors early in that process. So I think questions.
I think Trina's presentation is very clear and helpful. So I'm curious about minors. So my department does philosophy. We do minors, and we kind of informally advise them. We don't have a formal role, but a lot of them like us to. And we do underserved students, but I didn't hear about in this shift towards underserved minors. So I'm curious, would a 4-year plan involve your minor advisor, for example, in any kind of formal way? And then what were your discussions about serving the needs of underserved students in this new world?
Yeah, so the idea with a lot of these recommendations was that at this point, the scope of our committee was just to kind of come up with a recommendation that we need to have a system where we have a primary and, like you say, a more formalized secondary advisor to have to kind of refine that experience for the student. So we give the idea that we have together here at Worcester State, not just shuffling students around with miscommunication, right? So that's really important. And I think a lot of these other recommendations that have to do with documentation and kind of refining the system address that.
Yes.
So the idea now is that, and it's our expectation as a committee, right, because we've taken these recommendations and sent them to the president. Now is the president's decision, whether he adopts all of them, none of them, some combination of them, right, him, the provost, the board of trustees. So it's our expectation that if any of these recommendations are carried forward, that they do solicit feedback from multiple entities on campus to kind of hammer out those details, through the formation of a major, minor 4-year plan committee that works on that. So as far as the scope of what we did this summer, that's a little bit beyond that, but definitely good comments, and if you could write those down or submit them electronically, that would be great. Yes.
congratulations. It was a lot of work that you guys did. Can you talk about the electronic program that you guys created for scheduling and notes? I love that idea. And the whole starfish thing, are they mergeable or is it?
Okay, yes, so that was one thing that I didn't mention that's important is that Colleen is here from Academic Success, but Tammy Tebow in Academic Success has said that her department is going to kind of pilot starfish. Because we all know like we have starfish, and maybe some of us use it, maybe some of us don't, right? That goes in the idea of like having a definition of here's what advising is, here's the process. But with starfish, Tammy says that she's going to kind of intentionally try to use it for as many things as she can use it for this fall in Academic Success as they go through, their regular activities. So one thing I'm interested to hear is her feedback on how that went, because that's something we already paid for, something we already have. So one thing I'll mention that when I was looking at this system that we ultimately went with in health sciences, it's not Starfish, it's a third-party thing. I reached out to Tammy, I reached out to TK, who kind of runs Starfish, because I wanted to look for an option that we had already, that we didn't have to purchase additionally. So I reached out, and at the time, there were some issues with Starfish, and we couldn't get this to work with this. So that's when we decided to go with the platform. So I forgot to mention that Starfish may end up being the platform that we go with, if we can work out those kinks and go university-wide. Or it may not be Starfish, so there's still a lot of things that we're figuring out. But the system that we use is called acuityscheduling.com. So if you want to visit that website, acuityscheduling.com. And I think we pay like $200 a year or something like that for 5 users. So we only have 5 faculty members. So more users than that, it might be more expensive. Or you could share, or however you need to work that out. But we use acuityscheduling.com, and it's really simple. We get text messages, students get text messages, we create notes, things like that. Is there anything else you wanted?
No, thanks. I wanted the price and
Yeah, I think it's like less than $300, I believe, a year for a department of 5. Any other questions or comments?
Okay, for all these, because recommendations are wonderful, thank you very much, but when you discussed each of them, have you evaluated what resources we have right now and what resources will be in need, like for example, software, additional software, faculty resources?
Yes, so that is a good question. So we didn't have time to go through all of these today, but it is my understanding.
Could you repeat the question?
Oh.
It's just hard to hear back here lower.
Okay.
Thank you, sorry.
Okay, the question was that for each of the recommendation, have you evaluated the resources that we have right now, like our current status, and what will be needed?
Gotcha.
And especially I'm interested in like average number of students, advisors per faculty right now, and probably it's good to go by the departments because you're right, some of the departments have 60 or more advisors per faculty member. And this advising process will require more than 20 minutes of a meeting. And the meetings will run not only twice a year, but constantly, correct? So what do we have? Because right now I feel I'm in computer science, and while we are in the same situation, we have at least 60 advisors per faculty member. So how these recommendations, if we implement, if we go in this direction, and all these recommendations, wonderful, absolutely, are implemented, how much more faculty resources will be needed?
Thank you.
That's a good question. So we, as a committee, were told, that it's acknowledged that advising used to change in a pretty dramatic way. So that was kind of the reason we had the committee. So that's been acknowledged. We were also told when all the subcommittees met together that yes, there is some pool of resources that is available. So they created the subcommittees, and they created a pool of resources that was vague on what those actually were. But there's a pool of resources that they expect to take some action on some of these, and they understand they may have to put some resources into these. But again, it wasn't clear in terms of what that was. But they did ask us to provide things like this in our final report, like any that we already have that we could reallocate, any new resources that we would need. And we did put in there that, additional full-time faculty members and maybe different advisors with, departmental advisors and things like that. So we did put things in each one of these recommendations, and it's my understanding that these will be available to you at some point in the future, where you can log into the portal. Obviously, it's confidential for your eyes only. You don't share it with anybody, but that you'll have access to not just ours, but all the other subcommittees and their recommendations and what was written for each of these. So that would be important to look at.
So to go back to the minor question, in the major minor committee, one of their recommendations was the conversion of all interdisciplinary studies into or concentrations into minors. If we do that and there's nothing in this committee that addresses minor advising, aren't you simply shortchanging a whole bunch of programs?
Minor advising.
I wonder if your primary and secondary model can still hold if somebody is a major and a minor, or a major and a concentration. I really don't understand why concentration can't just say concentration.
Right.
But the only thing that wouldn't work is somebody who's trying to be a double major and concentrate, which is
Right.
complicated.
So that ties in more with recommendation.
Wasn't the concentrations in the major anyway?
The primary and the secondary.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Right. So is that-
Yeah. The concentrations were initially within majors, and now those concentrations become minors. And the current structure has somebody advising the concentrator. That advising structure vanishes under this model. So what are you going to do?
Right. Yeah, and so that's something, an important comment that I hope you write down, that will need to be hammered out. Because again, this was limited, this was a summer's worth of work. These were recommendations that we came up that we do need to think about a system for this. This is important because we don't necessarily need people meeting with each advisor to increase the load on each faculty member. So definitely, please write down those details that you think should be included in this discussion. If a call comes out to form a committee to further this recommendation, because that was the idea, is that these are recommendations that we don't even know if they're going to be adopted or not. So we were just kind of the scope of this summary, we should keep it very general, but I definitely think that's a good point. And I hope you'll raise it.
Because I just want to echo what, I don't know your name,
Oh, yeah.
in philosophy. In BPA, we also have undeclared students, and these are the very students sometimes, not all, but sometimes, who really need some extra supervision. And so I think some kind of website or something that would be targeted to them would be extremely useful. So I know that's outside the scope
Okay.
of what you did as well, but I will put it on the feedback sheet so that
Okay.
these students get some attention.
Okay, so maybe if you reference recommendation number 3, that in that we should have a special.
Some kind of target website or something that you can reinforce supervision on these students.
Just so that I understand the scope of what you tackled over the summer, was the focus only on undergraduate advising, or was graduate advising also considered?
Undergraduate. That's what
Okay.
we discussed here. That was the scope.
Okay.
So we do recognize, and so we recognize that transfer students are different, right? And that they may not be captured in all of these. We recognize that graduate students are different. So we definitely did discuss as a committee that, we understand the limitations, right? Anytime you write a research report, realize it's not perfect, so you mention your limitations, and those were limitations that we discussed. within the scope of all we can do over summer.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
How are we going to find out about the highlight options? This will be updated these.
So that would be a question for maybe Lois or Barry or Ryan. Yeah, because they just gave us the task of to come up with the recommendations, and once it's in their hands, kind of then the board of trustees and so on.
So a lot of this relies on the provision of new electronic platforms to do these things. How are you going to work out which platforms talk to one another, so on and so forth? The Starfish, theoretically, Starfish could talk to Blackboard if we paid more for one or the other.
Yes.
Theoretically, Starfish could do all of this if we paid more for
Correct.
Starfish, and you know the if we paid more for, right?
Right.
So my question is, in what way did the committee address the interactions between all of these electronic resources and our existing infrastructure?
Yeah, that was one thing that in our big meetings where all the subcommittees met together, like I'm sure Lois and Brian were getting annoyed with me because I would always ask, well, what's replacing WebAdvisor? What's replacing WebAdvisor? And this I see as a really good opportunity. Well, if we're already shopping, we're forced to be shopping for something. We need to be considering these other needs that we have. So I think that's a really important point, that we need to have IT be involved heavily. We need to have representation from different entities on campus. So like I said, it's our expectation that a committee, like a formal committee, will be formed by the president to work on these projects so that representation from as many people as possible is there. So yeah, but I agree with you that we need to think about what we already have. And if we're going to pay more for Starfish or even keep Starfish, we need, and this is something I brought up just on a personal level, we need not just to think about, well, we already have Starfish, how can we make it work? At this point, we need to think about, like, what needs do we have, and then what platform do we need to get us there, not the other way around. It's like, what do we already have, and how can we make that? So I expressed that personally, and I hope that was heard. So that's, I guess, my response to that.
I'm curious, how many people in your room actually use Starfish? Because I don't.
I use it limited.
That's because the version of Starfish we have is none of the four-year tracking and other kinds of planning stuff that comes with the other modules. It's basic.
It is basic.
Whatever thing.
Yes. And I did try that. So like I said, I wanted to look for options we already had, so I did try that before I used the Acuity scheduling online platform. But I ran into a lot of issues, and so that's why I was kind of saying, like, we need to first come up with our needs and look for something, to address those instead of the other way around. So I'm interested to hear from Academic Success, how their pilot test goes with actually using Starfish intentionally. And then that may justify us getting a more advanced version of it, or maybe getting Acuity scheduling or some combination, right? So it's our expectation that there will be a committee formed, to give the next step on that. Any other questions? All right, I think it's lunchtime. Thank you.